Hi, everyone. Welcome to Waste 360's Nothing Wasted podcast. On every episode, we invite the most interesting people in waste, recycling, and organics to sit down with us and chat candidly about their thoughts, their work, this unique industry, and so much more. So thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. This is Liz Bothwell from Waste 360 with Matanya Horowitz, founder and CEO of AMP Robotics. He's also one of our distinguished 40 Under 40 award winners.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liz. It's great to be back on the show.
Wow, it's been quite a year since we spoke last. Can you give a quick overview of AMP, and then we can get chatting about the pandemic and everything around that?
Yeah, absolutely. At AMP, we're developing robotic systems for the recycling industry powered by artificial intelligence. So we deploy robots that can sort most of the commodities that MRFs care about, different types of paper, metals, plastics, and they can sort this material autonomously, and we can install them with very little retrofit to existing operations. We're a fairly young company in the industry, but things are going well and we're scaling up. This last year, we deployed systems all over the world in single stream construction and demolition and electronic waste. And it's going, it's a lot of hard work supporting this many different systems in all these different facilities, but I think we have some very happy customers, and we've been glad to see that there's real demand for this type of technology in the industry.
That's great. And I know that AMP just hit a remarkable 1 billion milestone. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we highlighted that we've achieved 1 billion picks over the last year between all the different robots we have deployed, and it's something we're fairly proud of. We think the figure speaks to sort of the persistence of all of these different systems. You know, 1 billion is a huge number, and it requires a whole fleet of robots working day in, day out in these recycling facilities. And there's a couple different facets of it that really get us excited. One is, you know, you can do some back of the envelope math and look at how much you have to sort if you want to go after the entire material stream. And it's a lot. It's, you know, trillions or more. But, you know, we can see that we're chipping away at these huge numbers. And we can really start to feel within the company that we're making a big difference, sort of in an environmental sense. And that's exciting to me personally and everybody on the team. And yeah, it's just a kind of a milestone and a line in the sand, and we're just looking forward to, you know, getting to the 2nd billion and then the 10th billion and onwards from there. That's
great. And then we can't move on without talking about what's happening right now with COVID-19. Can you tell us a little bit about how AMP has pivoted during this time and your ability to keep the industry productive and safe?
Yeah, you know, the pandemic, of course, surprised us like everybody else, and it's been interesting to watch what the second order effects of this are. Recycling facilities across the country were already dealing with challenges around labor, whether it was turnover or safety or simply the cost of all of this manual labor that's necessary to run a typical MRF. And a lot of those issues have only become worse. You know, safety is even harder when sorters have to maintain these social distancing guidelines within a MRF that wasn't really constructed for, you know, for sorters to be able to maintain their distance. And I've heard all sorts of, you know, interesting things about MRFs trying to protect their workers, whether it's putting in physical barriers between sorters that are basically working side by side, or trying to do split shifts and other things that really make it very hard to run a MRF. But maintaining that safety is difficult. But what I've also heard is that the turnover in these MRFs has increased significantly. The sorters themselves are quite worried about about COVID-19, both getting it from the other workers and also getting it from the packaging. Although the guidance from the WHO and CDC, at least the guidance that I've read, is that workers shouldn't have a whole lot to be worried about from this packaging. You can imagine despite having that guidance, thinking about all of these milk jugs and plastic bottles coming from a house that might be infected, and maybe it's only a couple hours. It's only been a couple hours since that material came from the house, and you're going to be sifting through it. That material is going to be bouncing around, and the dust is going to be in the air and stuff. And so, it's understandable that the sorters are concerned. And so, facilities across the country are just having real challenges with turnover. For us, we think we can provide a tool that helps in this environment, where the discussion with different MRFs has evolved towards how, rather than necessarily putting the robots in the highest throughput areas, or maybe where there's the most direct financial return, facilities are becoming more interested in how can I deploy these systems to space out my workers, or how can I deploy these systems in the areas where the workers are most hesitant to be sifting through the material. And we're really excited is the wrong word, because it is a really challenging situation, but we're happy that we can play a role in helping these facilities plan their operations despite these challenges. And that's where the conversation has really evolved with a lot of the customers we're talking to right now. Something we are proud of is that I draw a direct line to the ability of the recycling industry to stay healthy to the supply of resources for the country, where you can see in over the last several weeks and the last several months, there's been all sorts of weird supply chain issues, whether it's masks, but also toilet paper and cardboard and things like that. And I think a connection that's starting to really be visible to the public is that recycling allows us to create domestic supplies of materials. And so the recycling industry is helping support the production of paper towels and napkins and toilet paper that otherwise we're sort of running short on. And so our ability to play a small part in maintaining that access to these resources, I think it's a big deal, and I'm glad we can at least have a small part in it.
Absolutely. And then on your end, you're still installing, right? I mean, I would think it's actually a good time to do the install.
It is. Well, in several cases. But yeah, we are continuing to install. So as I'm sure many of your listeners know, waste and recycling has been deemed an essential service. And so fortunately, despite many lockdowns, we are able to continue to install. Logistically, it has been more challenging. When the pandemic first started really being visible, we reorganized some of our installations, and we were prioritizing those we could drive to locally, and then we began going back out to the ones we could fly to and that were further away. We've been reorganizing things so we were able to do things with smaller installation teams that are a little bit more spaced out, and we spend a little bit more time on site cleaning the location and protecting our installers. But these are simply logistical challenges, and I think we've come up with a good system to allow us to continue to install despite the pandemic while taking care of our workers.
That's great. And how's your field operations team responding to all of this?
They've been doing an amazing job. When we were sitting there in mid-February, maybe it was late February, and wondering how exactly are we going to deal with this, what we saw was that our field installation team, our service team, and our fabrication team really rolled up their sleeves and grappled with this question of how do we keep the business running while protecting ourselves. And so we came up with a couple sanitary procedures just across the whole company, and everybody just dove in and kept working. I think everybody understood that maybe the easiest thing to do would have been to just go home, but to keep the business growing and to keep the business thriving, we had to keep producing and we had to keep taking care of our customers. And so the conversations I had with them were, this virus isn't a mysterious thing. There are certain things that are still mysterious, but there are ways we can protect ourselves. And if we have good procedures in place, there's no reason we should expect we will get infected. And that means maybe an excess amount of cleaning and an excess amount of protective equipment and it'll be a bit of a hassle, but we should be able to control our response to this and therefore take care of ourselves while continuing to grow the company. And yeah, the whole team got behind that, and we were, I would say, it was a fantastic response for the team where they really helped figure out how we were going to deal with this while moving forward.
That's great. And are you seeing the industry pivot as well? The MRFs, your customers, around, you mentioned a little bit about safety, but also materials coming in.
Yeah, well, I would say that I think it's mostly a short-term thing, but of course there's a lot of interest in automation for the sorting of fiber just because the prices have gotten so high. What I've seen is really, I think it'll be mostly a long-term shift in that even if the pandemic subsides over the next month or two, people really are focused on not letting themselves be caught flat-footed, where, maybe pandemics are a rare event, but something like this is sure to happen again sooner or later. And so having their facilities have sufficient automation to be resilient despite these types of challenges is a broader concern that I think isn't going to go away anytime soon. And so I think the industry, maybe it's not a pivot, but it's a greater appreciation for the benefits of automation, and not just our automation, but a lot of the different automation that's available across the industry.
I mean, to that point, do you see the pandemic pushing the industry to adopt technology faster than it normally would, beyond just appreciating it? Do you think that is turning into actual adoption rates improving?
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. I think there's a couple interesting case studies where you can see the benefits of this type of automation. So one of our customers is a gentleman named Joe Benedetto who runs the RDS facility in Virginia. And so Joe uses our robots on his paper line, and a lot of the time he's able to run his paper line entirely on robots. And so for Joe, he was kind enough to say some nice things about us publicly, but for Joe, he's able to continue running despite that area in Virginia having broader labor challenges around the pathogen. And what I see is other facilities look at the capabilities of facilities like Joe's. And now it's not only about, can I sort of shave a couple bucks per hour off of my processing cost? It's, Joe's facility is resilient. He's able to continue chugging along despite the pandemic. It really hasn't been all that disruptive to his operations, and he's able to produce paper and take advantage of these price spikes around paper. And so, Joe's ability to continue going forward despite adversity, I think it underlines that capability, and it's a bit of a different message than a lot of facilities were receptive to, where primarily up to now it was about cost savings. And of course, the robots do provide significant cost savings. That's a benefit, but that's not the only thing that they're about. They're about quality, and they're about consistency. And so, sort of unfortunately, these types of scenarios that we're going through right now highlight that capability of the robotic systems. And so, we are seeing other facilities in our pipeline able to appreciate that, and we do see most generally a broader and faster adoption of robotics across the industry.
That's a nice positive coming out of all this. And I know you've spoken about some of the ways that your team has adapted to this, but what do you feel you've learned about leading during these wild times?
I don't think I don't know if I've been a leader long enough to really have any good lessons. I think what I've seen is that in times like this, there's a couple things you got to get right. So first is your decision making has to be correct. What I mean by that is when you start replanning and when you start saying this is how we're going to move the ship of the company, you have to be making really good decisions that people understand and that they believe in. And so not only do they see the response, but they feel like they're being taken care of in a responsible way. What I've also seen is that there's a strong need to communicate, where the path the company is going to take may be very clear to me. I have all sorts of information, whether it's the company's financials, whether it's one-on-one interactions with our customers, but a lot of that information isn't available to, say, our programmers or the field technician, and they might get little snippets of it from their interactions with customers, but that lack of access to information can be unsettling when you don't know how severely an event like this is affecting the company. Communicating a great deal about the shape the company's in, the direction we're going, how we're responding, really puts a lot of minds at ease and can help rally a team behind a change in direction of the company. And so, yeah, I suppose my response would be, in times like this, leadership is about a lot of communication and setting a clear direction that people believe will see them through a tough situation like this.
Absolutely. That's spot on. And then, Matanya, I know that you guys have grown 40% quarter over quarter. That's remarkable. How are you adjusting to this tremendous growth?
It's really exciting for us. We're very fortunate to have a team of, it's hard to sort of put into words, but a team of really sincere individuals where everybody really wants the company to succeed, and they know that their personal success is highly correlated with the company's success. And what it's led to is a team that's really welcoming to new people and who helps integrate new employees very quickly. And we were a pretty lean group for a long time, and we still are, but there are a lot of people wearing a lot of different hats and doing a lot of different jobs. And so the influx of new players in the company is giving everybody, I think, a lot of relief. It's like, oh, okay, all right, this company is growing. I'm not going to keep doing a million things forever. And we're bringing on real specialists to do different things, whether that's in engineering, whether that's in sales, whether that's just in G&A activities. And so the real bones of the company are starting to grow, and that puts everybody in a really excited place where they see that their hard work has led to the creation of something that's going to be lasting. And so it's been a wonderful transformation over the last year. And something that's very exciting for me is that I saw that as the company started to grow, there are different ways in which the company was slowing down, either in technical capability or technical speed. And now that we've figured out how to be a company at this next size, everything is speeding back up again. And so technical progress is actually accelerating. We're hiring lots of engineers, and we're hiring lots of people across the board, and the company is just moving faster and faster. And so our ability, what we're delivering today in terms of robotics is not the only thing we're going to be doing. And there's a lot of other things that we're beginning to really focus on with having to do with our vision system or having to do with bigger ideas of how facilities can take advantage of the technology. And we're starting to really execute across all of these different directions. And so seeing that the growth enables continued development of technology is exciting for me personally, and then everybody across the company.
That's awesome. Can you talk about any of those enhancements or the way that you will be allowing customers to use their data? Or is that something we'll see down the road and you'll talk about it? Okay.
Well, there are a lot of things that we'll see down the road, but some things to highlight are, so we collect a tremendous amount of data from these systems so that they continue to get better and better over time. And the main focus for a long time was, how do we get the decisions the system makes to be more accurate? So I can, I want to make sure the natural HTTP I pick is 99% pure or 99.9% pure. Or it was about expanding into new domains like construction and demolition material or electronic waste. But now we have a sufficient amount of data, literally, millions of examples of different things, where we can start to become more specific about what the system's able to identify. So we've talked about it a lot in the past as sort of this future capability, but now we're really ramping up to the capability of identifying individual SKUs of material. And for a lot of recyclers, there won't be this immediate sort of clarity on how that's going to benefit them. Like, do they really care if they're going to pick up a PET bottle and it's Pepsi versus Coke? But the capability allows you to do other things where you can say, oh, I can identify not only a piece of paper, but I can identify if a piece of paper is dirty or not. Or I can identify if a plastic bottle is full of liquid or not. And so we can give this really fine-grained level of control about what a facility wants to sort. And that translates to, of course, new sorting capabilities by these robotic systems, but also a finer level of waste characterization that we can provide from our vision system. So not only saying, hey, on your fiber line, we're seeing 99 pieces of paper, one piece of cardboard, but that one piece of cardboard, maybe it was a pizza box, right, and has pizza inside of it. And so you start to have a very sophisticated knowledge of what's being delivered down the back end to the end markets, as well as what's coming in. We also have had a really successful project in Toronto with our partners at Canada Fibers and Sidewalk Labs, where we're identifying material on the front end of the system, basically doing a waste characterization. It's been a fantastic project where we've been able to show that these vision systems can start to automate in a pretty wide scale knowledge of material that's coming into the facility, and that begins to create all sorts of interesting questions of, if I know the contamination level of what's coming in, or I know there's a higher concentration of plastics or whatnot, what am I going to do with the facility to adapt to that input material stream? And so we're starting to really execute on these interesting questions, and with the broader engineering team, we're beginning to move quite fast in building out technology solutions around that.
Wow, that's fascinating. I can't wait to hear more about that as you roll that out even more. I'm thinking about the industry as a whole, and I know that you have your financial partners and you're watching this closely. Do you see more financial investment in this sector as a whole, as it relates to, some of your investors, the closed loop? And do you think they're more confident in what this industry can do from a technology perspective?
Oh, absolutely. We were fortunate at the end of last year to receive a Series A investment from a great group of investors, including the Closed Loop Partnership. This group, Sidewalk Labs, which is an affiliate, or I don't think it's quite technically an affiliate, but it's associated with Alphabet and Google, as well as several other investors interested in clean tech and artificial intelligence, and as well as Sequoia, which is a very successful venture capital firm that's invested in other sort of very well-known companies like Google, and it was an amazing experience raising funds from these investors where, it's funny, when you go out to pitch an equipment company in the recycling industry, a lot of investors are actually fairly skeptical. They know that the recycling world is a tough one to be in, the environment's tough on equipment, that you have to really convince your customers that you're providing value, and they're going to be skeptical as well. But what we found was that there were investors like Sequoia and like Sidewalk that really, and like all of our investor syndicate, who really believe that this technology can help improve the economics of the recycling process. And if we're successful in doing that, the recycling industry could be much bigger than what it is today. And that was an exciting thing for me to see, that message was resonating with these types of investors. And so, yes, what I see is there is a very broad appetite for investors, at least those that I deal with in the venture community, to invest in the recycling space because they believe that there is something bigger going on where technology, whether it's robotics, artificial intelligence, whether it's other things like optical sorters, are creating a new environment for recycling where the processing costs can be low enough that the industry starts to grow significantly. And I think the key there is that just like we have to identify good business opportunities that not only help create the business itself, but that grow the recycling industry overall. And we believe the robots are doing that. So yes, as long as we're able to show that, I think there's actually a very broad appetite for that. And what I've heard from other investors out of Silicon Valley is that robotics and automation are also providing a significant boost in other industries outside of recycling where the pandemic has created labor issues. And so there's a bit of a broad trend around automation in the face of these sort of macro shocks to the system where the benefits to automation are really being appreciated and are helping accelerate the growth of groups like AMP, which in turn creates good investment opportunities.
Definitely. And then are you watching anything in DC around policy along the same lines, sort of bigger picture within the sector?
Yeah, we are actually. It's something that AMP doesn't have too much experience about itself, but there's a number of interesting policy initiatives happening across the board, whether it was the federal legislation as well as some pretty strong legislation coming out of California. We're, in general, pretty excited about a lot of this, excited about the interest from lawmakers, as well as the fact that a lot of these legislative initiatives require some type of measurement of the waste stream to be effective. And so we believe our Neuron vision system platform can help provide a lot of the information and the data that can help these policy initiatives. And so for us, we think we have an important role to play as both federal and state governments look to expand on or look to grow the recycling industry. And we think that's going to accelerate as in our conversations and the knowledge we have with policymakers. We've seen that there is a real appreciation for what the recycling industry is doing around fiber and its conservation of materials within the nation. And so I think as that message starts to become stronger and stronger, policymakers are seeing that, recycling isn't just this, I don't know how to say it, just this sort of good thing to do that just a certain fraction of the population is interested in, but it's all really, a sham or, whatever the sort of public criticism of the day is for recycling. They're starting to understand that, this really is a very important industry. It creates a tremendous number of jobs. And it keeps resources domestically. We've seen, although today it's an interest in paper and fibers, tomorrow it may be an interest in the conservation of metals, and then another day it may be plastics. And so I think that's going to put some real wind in the sails of these different policy initiatives to help support the recycling industry in different ways. And hopefully we'll take a part through our vision system and our technology.
That's great. And speaking of other materials, do you think that there's any application for your technology in textile recycling?
That's an interesting question. For some reason this week, I've gotten an inquiry several times, so something big must be happening in textiles. The technology is able to sort textiles in certain ways. So the gripping actually ends up not being the real challenge there. It ends up being the vision problem. So our technology can visually identify material roughly as well as a person can. And so if you look at a piece of clothing and you know that, let's say that it's jeans, or that it's white, or that it's a t-shirt, our system will be able to tell those things as well. However, when what we found in the textile industry is they're generally most interested in the separation of textiles based on the material being used. So is it wool? Is it synthetic? Is it a blend? Is it cotton? We can't directly tell those things. There are other technologies we've seen that can that use hyperspectral systems. And so we've been looking to find an application that would be interesting to separate purely visually. We do anticipate adding sensors necessary in the future, infrared and others, to be able to distinguish these materials, but we're not doing it today. So we haven't quite found that good fit. If somebody just wants to separate out white t-shirts or jeans or something like that, we could absolutely do it. But that doesn't map perfectly to the existing categories that the industry cares about most.
Okay, gotcha. Hey, it might be something to watch. I could talk to you in 2 years, and you could have gone down that road.
Yeah, absolutely. Within 2 years, I think it's hard to imagine. I don't know. The technology always takes longer to develop than I think, but I'd like to say we're going to go after absolutely everything within 2 years. 2 years just seems so far away.
It does. It definitely does. And then, so Matanya, I know this pandemic has been a trying time for everyone, and we all applaud our essential workers. And you guys have been doing such a great job adjusting to this and making the most of it and really helping the industry. But is there anything that you've learned from this pandemic that you hope that as humans and in industry, we remember after we come out of it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I hope people might take away the same lesson that I've taken away, which is that rare events happen all the time. And, over a long enough time period, it's sort of inevitable that something big happens and you have to be prepared for it. I think, when I was seeing the pandemic play out, I was really surprised myself. I felt like this was a problem from a different century, and that our society that there was no way that this could happen in America. And it felt like something coming out of the 1920s. And, in reflecting on that, as our technology becomes better, we are defended against more and more of these types of events. Our economic models, our protective equipment, everything is built on a great deal of experience, and it sure feels like there should be fewer and fewer things that we don't anticipate over time. But nonetheless, these surprising events happen. And so, when we come out of this, I'll always have a little bit more conservativeness in how I plan for the company. I'll always be trying to anticipate whether something really big could get in our way. Although we do help facilities get through the pandemic, it certainly has been very disruptive for us. We've had to do a lot of work to replan the direction of the company, make sure everybody's taken care of, and to deal with different logistical challenges. And so our ability to navigate those things in the future will always be top of mind. And I think for the industry, knowing that things like this could happen in the future, things like China's national sword could happen in the future, who knows what's next in 5 or 10 years. Keeping that top of mind, of course, I think automation presents a wide variety of defenses to these different types of shocks to the system. But whether or not people think robots are the solution to these things, I think the industry has to always be prepared because it's too important for the industry to really take too big of a hit on these things.
Definitely. And then with all that has gone on lately, has your vision or goals for the company changed?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think this is always true for me, but I always wish the company was at the next stage of growth, because I always see, it's always just around the corner before we're going to have some new suite of technologies or some new tools that let us scale and deploy technology faster. So I wish we'd been a little bit bigger and a little bit further along. We could have, I think, served industry demand even more quickly and helped facilities navigate the crisis even better. But no, I'd say this pandemic has only reinforced the direction of the company and really speaks to why we're even here. We're providing solutions for the recycling industry to help them become more efficient. And I'm overusing this word resilient, but be resilient. And this pandemic just underlines that.
Definitely. And to your point, the industry has always been resilient, and this is a trying time, but it will continue to be that way. Now, Matanya, is there anything else that you want to share that I didn't ask you about?
I would just say that AMP is going to be continuing to grow and solve major pain points within the recycling industry, even those that are unrelated to the pandemic. We're really excited about what the next year holds for us. As the vision system gets more capable and identifies items down to the SKU level, we think it's going to open up all sorts of optionality for recycling facilities, and where we have some great things for the robots themselves in terms of throughput increases and other things that we're really excited to share for the industry. So for anybody in the industry that's involved in sorting, I hope they stay tuned to what AMP is doing.
That's great. I hope so too, and we will. So thank you so much for your time, Matanya. It was so nice to catch up with you, and please stay well and keep us posted as you continue to grow and help the industry move forward.
Likewise, Liz. Please take care.
Okay. Thanks, Matanya. Talk soon.